Continue our conversation concerning the Casey Anthony case and a report from WKMG that sources, investigators close to this investigation, as there we see Casey last week, are beginning to believe strongly that Casey did kill Kaylee, did it by herself, and did it on purpose. It was pre-planned. We have an expert panel lined up, and we're taking your calls. Let's get right to the phones. Bev in New York. Bev, what's your theory here?
Hi, Mike.
Hey.
Well, I kind of agreed with you at first, that it was an accident. But when I watch her sitting in court, she gives that little cocky smile. You kind of think, how can anybody sit there and do that? I'm a grandmother and a great-grandmother, and if something happened like that, if I had done something, even by accident, I would be a basket case.
I know. And Bev, so you thought like accident. Now you're thinking it was pre-planned. Is that
correct?
You did think that.
And then I'm wondering how she's ever going to get a fair trial, though. I mean, because if I thought maybe it was an accident and they wanted me to sit on the case to say,
Okay.
I'm sure other people have seen this.
Bev,
I watch you all the time.
Right. Thanks, Bev. You make up two great points. Let's hit on one of them. Brian Russell, we talked about this a little last week, and let's reiterate it. The smile, just her mannerisms in court. Appalling to me. It's like they're talking about autopsy photos of your little girl, and she's coming with a smirk a couple of minutes later. What does that tell you?
Well, absolutely, it's inconsistent with what we would expect. What it means is difficult to interpret from person to person without actually evaluating her. What does it mean for her? Certainly to most of us watching from a distance, it appears callous. It appears to be not the reaction we'd expect from a grieving mother who had nothing to do with the death of her child. But it's a little bit tough to say that here from a distance without actually getting to know her and seeing what she's like. Certainly throughout this entire thing, she has shown lots of signs and continues to do so to this day that her focus is more on her than on her daughter or anything else.
Yeah, exactly. And let's hit the second half with Mark Eiglarsh. Mark, that brings up a good point. How is she going to get a fair trial? How do you see this playing out so that happens?
I've said this case is won or lost in jury selection if the defense has any shot. The defense attorney needs to stand, as I do, in back of the client, hold the client, say, folks, look over at my client right now. You all come here with preconceived feelings, notions. Some of you now are looking at my client. I need to know whether you could fairly judge this case exclusively based on the evidence and not how my client looks.
Okay.
And you really need to hammer that point home and get people to say, no, I'm going to have a tough time of it. She looks like she doesn't care, or, get out those feelings and get rid of those potential jurors.
Do you think they'll want to change a venue, Mark? Because, can they really get an impartial jury there in Orlando, in Orange County?
It's definitely tougher, but this is a national story. This is all over. I think that they're going to find a tough time finding people who can be fair, but at the same time, it can be done. If it can be done in OJ's 2 trials, they could do it here.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah, they will. They'll find it.
Hey, let's look at the evidence here of, again, I think unlike many, and Bev agreed with me, one of our viewers, it looked accidental. The one thing that says of what we know that this was premeditated is when you start looking at those computer searches. On Casey's computer, searches for neck breaking, searches for uses for chloroform, household goods as murder weapons. Doesn't that strike you, Mike? And then we'll get to Mark on the legal front of that, but go ahead, Mike.
No, it does. And also, coupled with the fact, duct tape around her mouth. What is that? If that's not an aggravated circumstance, I don't know what is. But again, putting all this together, all of those witness statements, putting that together and putting together this timeline that we're now starting to see of she was in the trunk at least 2 days. It looks like they're starting to put together their case even stronger.
Okay, let's get back to the phones. Joel in Tennessee. Joel, you with us?
Yes, I got a couple questions.
Go ahead.
One, when the duct tape analysis comes back, if it turns out to be Casey's fingerprints on it, I'd be interested to hear what kind of defense our learned attorney there would put forth to the group to explain that. Also, the other piece, or the other question I have, is earlier in the case, the Anthony's came on and said that whoever had Kaylee was under surveillance. The message that I got is they knew and they were watching. And obviously, if that's the case, I never heard anything else about it. So I guess the follow-up question to that would be, do they stand a chance to be charged for obstruction of justice on this?
Okay. Well, first of all, Dr. Bruce Levy, what are we going to get from the duct tape? Can we get fingerprints? Are you confident in that?
Well, I'm not confident of that. We certainly can have that duct tape tested, and if her fingerprints were on that duct tape, it can be detected and it can be determined that they were hers. Whether they're there or not, we don't know. But of course, if they are there, it's going to just strengthen the case that they have.
Okay, I'm checking with our producer, Kurt. We're going to continue on this? Okay, we're going to continue with this conversation. We're going to continue to take your calls. 1-877-TEL-HLN. Premeditated murder or not?